The jungle was not quiet that night. Every leaf, every insect wing, every raindrop seemed charged with attention too heavy for words. The air was thick with humidity, carrying the smell of gunpowder, sweat, and something darker, fear. And in that dense silence, broken only by the faint whir of mosquitoes and the distant crack of gunfire, a Navy SEAL medic crouched beside a wounded soldier. His eyes, trained to stay calm in chaos, flickered nervously toward the young woman kneeling across from him. She moved with precision, steady hands pressing gauze against a jagged wound, her face as calm as though she were tying shoelaces rather than holding a man's life together. She was not supposed to be there, at least not in any official roster. She was an attached specialist, someone they barely knew, and yet in that moment she was the only one who seemed utterly unshaken. And when the medic finally asked, with the soft disbelief of a man trying to understand the impossible, where she had trained, she leaned close, her voice barely louder than the breath of the jungle, and whispered, "Ghost Division, 400-meter record." Those words landed like a thunderclap. They meant nothing to most, but to the few who knew, the ones who had heard the rumors of a clandestine unit that didn't officially exist, they meant everything. Ghost Division, the shadow of shadows, the place where only the most broken or most brilliant were taken, refined and buried in silence, a place whispered about in the corners of military camps, dismissed as myth by most, yet feared by all who suspected it was real. And 400-meter record? That was no casual phrase. It was a confession, almost an admission of guilt carrying weight like chains. To hit a record shot at such an impossible distance meant more than skill. It meant she had lived in a world of precision, where every breath and heartbeat was calculated, where the line between life and death was measured not in seconds, but in millimeters of scope alignment. But the medic saw something else when she said it. Her eyes didn't shine with pride. They didn't burn with arrogance. They trembled just for a flicker, with the memory of all the things that distance had cost her. She wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't supposed to exist in their files, their databases, their after-action reports. And yet here she was, patching up men who outweighed her by 50 pounds, carrying stretchers through the mud as if she had done it her whole life, bleeding when they bled, running when they ran. Her presence was both a mystery and a miracle, but beneath the surface it was also a wound that had never healed. Her name was Nadia. And this was her story. Nadia had grown up in silence. Not the kind of silence born from peace, but the kind carved by absence. Her father, a decorated sniper in an elite unit, had died before she could remember his face. Her mother, hollowed by grief, left Nadia to be raised by her grandfather, a man of steel who believed the world owed them nothing and that survival was a choice made daily. He trained her young, long before her hands were steady enough to hold a rifle, long before her legs were strong enough to bear the weight of a rucksack. He taught her that the world respected strength, but it revered precision. He would take her into the mountains, forcing her to run trails with rocks cutting into her shoes, making her lie prone in the snow for hours until her body shook, teaching her to still her breath until even her heartbeat seemed to pause. By 16, she could outshoot men twice her age. By 18, she could outlast them. And when she was pulled into recruitment, not the official kind, not the posters in glossy colors promising careers and pensions, but the kind where strangers in dark suits came knocking, she didn't hesitate. She signed away her future with steady hands because in her heart, she believed she was honoring the man whose shadow had raised her. But what she entered was no ordinary unit. It was a program designed to erase identity, to burn away every weakness, and to mold warriors who would never officially exist. They called it Ghost Division because that's all its graduates became, phantoms. The training broke most. Some left with shattered bodies, others with broken minds. Nadia stayed. She stayed through the starvation weeks, when they were given nothing but water and expected to run miles on willpower alone. She stayed through the drowning drills when instructors forced them under until panic turned to darkness, then revived them only to do it again. She stayed through the sniper trials where a single missed shot meant days of punishment that pushed bone against skin, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, she began to thrive. She carried weights heavier than she should have, ran faster than her frame suggested, and when she held the rifle, it was as though the world itself slowed to her pace. The 400-meter record had not been her goal. It had been her curse. She remembered the mission clearly. The wind was brutal, the target almost invisible, the time window measured in seconds. She had calculated everything, the angle, the drag, the shift of air through the valley. When the shot landed, the silence that followed was not celebration but awe, and then something colder. Her instructors didn't clap. They stared. Because that shot didn't just break a record, it shattered a barrier. And the one who shatters barriers is rarely rewarded. She is marked. She becomes the tool that can never be put down. From that day forward, Nadia wasn't just a ghost. She was the phantom weapon they pulled out when no one else could do it. Missions blurred into one another. Deserts, jungles, mountains, cities. She fought wars that never appeared in headlines, lost comrades whose names never existed, carried wounds that no one ever acknowledged. And slowly, piece by piece, her soul eroded. By the time she was attached to the SEAL team, she wasn't even sure if she was saving lives anymore, or just prolonging her own punishment. That night in the jungle, when the medic asked about her training, it wasn't curiosity. It was instinct. He had seen something in her movements, something in the way she did not hesitate, and he needed to know who she was. Her whisper was both confession and shield. She wanted him to understand, but she also wanted him to stop asking, because to speak of Ghost Division was to remember it, and remembering was pain. As the team pushed deeper into hostile territory, Nadia carried her weight without complaint. When their rations dwindled, she went without. When their feet bled from endless marches, she walked anyway. And when the medic faltered, haunted by his own failures, burdened by the lives he couldn't save, she was the one who steadied him. Not with words, but with presence. She was proof that even the broken could still stand. But the truth of Nadia's past couldn't stay buried. One night, when the campfire burned low and the men spoke in hushed tones, one of them asked why she never missed. Why even in chaos her shots always seemed to land. She didn't answer at first. Her eyes stared into the fire, seeing not flames but memories. The faces of those she had marked, the lives she had ended. And finally, in a voice that cracked like dry wood, she said, "Because missing was never an option. Not where I came from." The silence that followed was heavy. The SEALs were warriors, killers in their own right, but they knew what she meant. They knew that somewhere beyond their world of missions and medals, there existed a darker place where the cost of failure was not reprimand but obliteration. And yet, despite everything she carried, Nadia never stopped healing others. She bound wounds, carried men across rivers, whispered encouragement when exhaustion threatened to consume them. She had been trained to be a ghost, but in those nights she became something more. She became the reason they kept going. It was not a single battle that defined her. It was the countless small moments, the hand she placed on a trembling shoulder, the steady aim that cleared a path, the quiet strength that reminded them all that survival was possible. She was living proof that even those born in shadows could become the light for others. When the mission ended and the SEALs returned, scarred but alive, Nadia disappeared once more into silence. She left no trace, no record, not even a name in the files, but the men who had walked beside her never forgot. For them, she was not just a ghost. She was the guardian who had bled so they could live, and for the medic, the memory of her whisper, Ghost Division, 3,400-meter record, would echo for the rest of his life, not as a boast, but as the quiet cry of a woman who had carried more than any human should. And perhaps that is the lesson her story leaves us with. Sometimes the strongest souls are the ones we never know about. The heroes who move in silence, whose names are erased, whose victories are never celebrated, but their impact, etched into the lives they save, lasts forever. If this story touched your heart, if Nadia's silent strength left you feeling something you cannot put into words, I humbly ask you to take a moment to support this channel. Like this video, share it, and subscribe so that her story and others like it can continue to reach hearts across the world. Special request to comment. Write in the comments what Nadia's journey meant to you, and whether you believe silent heroes like her walk among us every day. Because maybe, just maybe, the ghosts are real, and maybe they are the reason we're still here.